I have been using this Galaxy S23 Ultra for a month now. And in that time, I have created a list of things, a list of pros, mixed points, and cons, which I'd like to share with you today. I'm going to split it into 3 categories: the cameras, the battery and performance, and the software. And then I have a few other things that didn't really fit into the categories, which I will tell you at the end. So, starting with the cameras, my verdict is, well, overall, they're really, really good. My previous phone was the S20 Plus, and the cameras on that were very good for the time. But the cameras on this, the picture quality, the video quality, is just a step up in almost every way. Going through the list, looking at the pros, the mixed, and then the cons, we start with the video quality. That is something which is a massive upgrade over 3 years ago, and a pretty big upgrade still over just last year. It looks much closer to iPhone video now. Still not quite as good as the 14 Pro and the 14, but it's almost there, and if Samsung continues with the improvements at this rate, I'm sure they will catch up with the iPhone in the next 1 or 2 years. And that's just based on the quality of the videos alone. So this is me testing the recording on the S23 Ultra, as well as the mic quality. This is at 4K 60 frames a second. Something else about the videos which has been improved, and which is probably the most unexpected improvement, is the stabilization. Here, I'll do a demonstration of it now. You can see, when I compare it to this iPhone XR, the difference in stabilization. The slight movements of my hand are significantly more janky in the XR than they are on the S23 Ultra. And this is a significant improvement from even just last year. It's not something which has been gradual. Another upgrade which helps video improve, although doesn't just help video this time, is the autofocus. It wasn't bad on the S20 Plus, and neither is it on the iPhone SE 2020, which I'm recording this on, nor the iPhone XR. However, it's a level above on the S23 Ultra, which I'll show you here. This is without focus enhancer, this pop-up, turned on. I wouldn't recommend using it. It seems to swap between different lenses to be able to focus more quickly, but honestly, the autofocus is so good that you just don't really need it. In terms of photos, the new 12 megapixel pixel binned photos, down from 200 megapixels, look really nice. I'll mention a bit later, they are very HDR-y, which is something which some people like, some people won't. But I quite like it. I get to see a lot of detail in all of the image. They are also just very detailed in general, thanks to that 200 megapixel sensor. And the low light performance, again thanks to that sensor and the pixel binning, is amazing. It's much better than my S20 Plus, which, wasn't terrible, but the S23 Ultra is again just a level above. The low light performance also applies to video, although not to the 8K 30 mode, which I will touch on a bit later as well. The last feature, which I'd say is good, is the 10x zoom camera. It's surprisingly detailed. It looks close, not the same as, but close enough to the main sensor. And it's much better than trying to take 10x zoom photos on an iPhone. And I'd say it's something that I hope Samsung keeps around, because it's a real benefit to this phone. Looking at what's mixed, as I said before, the lots of HDR Well, that's something which sort of goes down to preference. Some people, like me, do like the HDR look, although I do think that it's something which can be overdone, though this phone seems to do very well at keeping it in acceptable levels. Another thing that's mixed is the macro lens. I like that they have the macro lens. I have some photos I've taken, some selfies taken by Hammer Slam Bowser, and they look good, and the focus distance is pretty short, and it's a nice benefit. It's a bit annoying that it uses the ultra wide angle. I don't know, I presume it has to, but it does make it look a bit weird because you obviously just have that lens distortion. But because it's just an additional extra, I think it goes into mix, you know. I'm not saying it's ruined or anything, it's just a nice to have feature that's just slightly annoying because of the lens. Going on to the cons then, the first thing would have to be, again starting with video, the 8K video. Now, as I said, the video overall is much improved, but the 8K video, the 8K 30, which is again an improvement in frame rate, it still isn't really ready for mainstream. There's not really a reason to be filming in 8K, and this phone doesn't film in 8K very well. It needs lots and lots of light, otherwise it will be super noisy, and you may as well just shoot 4K 60 or 1080p 60, because then you can do, at 1080p 60, you can take HDR10 plus videos and have other, maybe more useful features, although it would be nice if they did allow you to film in Dolby Vision. The next thing is just all photos. The 100x zoom is usable for some circumstances, only really taking photos of words. If you're taking a photo of anything else, it becomes really, really blurry, and it's not really much of an improvement over last year, which is a shame, but at the end of the day, it's not really a feature that I use outside of just showing it off. The 3x zoom camera, however, is where I'm a bit more disappointed. I think it's sort of annoying that it's worse than, I'd say it's worse than the 10x zoom camera, because I'd argue the 3x zoom camera is more useful, or at least used more, but it's not terrible. It's still usable, it's just disappointing. And the last thing, which is a con of the camera, is the 200 megapixel mode. This isn't really much of a con because you're not forced to use it, it's more of just an add-on, they just allow you to. But I wouldn't really recommend taking 200 megapixel photos. They aren't particularly useful unless you really want to blow up the photo. And again, like the 8K video, unless you have lots of light, they will be noisy, and the detail you gain for most people isn't really worth it. So next we have the battery and performance. And honestly, I don't have anything negative to say. I just have a whole list of positive notes. So, starting with overall performance, which I talked about in my 10 best S23 Ultra features video, it's really, really good. It's really smooth all the time. Opening apps, closing apps, all of the animations are as smooth as they are on the latest Pro iPhone, which is something which I haven't been able to say about any previous Samsung phone. Yes, my last Samsung phone was the S23 Ultra, but I have tried using some of the previous ones, the S22 Ultra and the S21 Ultra, and while they were still good, they weren't on that iPhone level where everything is smooth. Anyway, as I said, I talked about that in my 10 best S23 Ultra features video. Looking at performance in more high-intensity applications, it does really well still. Now, that's expected. It is the latest device using the latest chip, but I'm still impressed. I had a constantly smooth experience playing PUBG Mobile at maximum graphics, the HDR Plus Extreme, and it looks really good in games like FIFA Mobile, Call of Duty Mobile, even Pokemon Go, it performs really well. And what's most impressive is using battery bypass, it didn't even heat up that much. That's another of the features that I talked about in my top 10 best S23 Ultra features video. So if you want to learn a bit more about that, you should go and watch it, how to turn it on, etc. But it heated up less using that feature and playing PUBG Mobile at the highest graphics than my S20 Plus would heat up while using Twitter. And obviously, this phone didn't heat up during normal usage at all either. Now, this is obviously partly to do with generational improvements. The processor in it is a few years newer than the S20 Plus, but a big part of it is definitely due to the switch in the UK at least, and most places in Europe, etc. The switch from Exynos to Snapdragon. It's much more efficient, it uses less battery, it heats up less, and it's just generally better. And that is something that I'm extremely grateful for, and I'm thankful that Samsung finally listened to what a lot of more vocal fans were calling out for. And because of that, and other software tweaks and the big battery, the battery is a huge improvement as well. Now, my S20 Plus definitely suffered from a degraded battery. I don't know how degraded, but a few weeks before I got the S23 Ultra, it did drop from 30% to nothing in a matter of minutes. So it was almost certainly degraded. However, that is something which can be mitigated using a new feature of this phone. If you go into settings and search protect, you will see protect battery show up. Some people, I wouldn't recommend it, but I find that with 85% you can last an entire day. The battery itself doesn't just have these preventative measures, it's better overall. And considering that I'm using the phone at 1440p and with adaptive refresh rate, which means it can go up to 144Hz turned on as well. For most people then, the battery will be even more impressive because it gets sent with the screen resolution set to 1080p. It will easily be able to last a full day of normal usage for most people then. And to back up my battery claims, I have a few screenshots here, a few photos of me playing without being plugged in PUBG Mobile and FIFA Mobile, both at maximum graphics. And I'll show how long I played each game for as well. On to the last main section, the software. There isn't really anything that's a full negative here. It's all just positives and a few things which are a bit mixed. So something which isn't really a massive feature, but is nice to have, is the Google Discover feed. I was a bit perplexed when they announced that the S21s would be able to use Google Discover in their Samsung Home, but then that wasn't backported to the S20. I don't really know why. Maybe it was some agreements they had with Google, I'm not sure. But it's nice that they still have it here. It's much better than the Samsung News Update whatever feed they had before, which was very slow. As you can see, it loads in very quickly, and I find it provides me with relevant news and things which I like. The next thing, and which is kind of a group, is the pre-installed apps. I'm glad that Google Messages is pre-installed because I prefer it to Samsung Messages, but do keep in mind that the chat features of Samsung Messages and Google Messages are the same. They both use RCS, so no matter whether you're using Google Messages or Samsung Messages, if you turn chat features on, you'll be able to use RCS messages in between both messaging apps completely fine. So it's not that important. However, what's nice is that you can uninstall whichever one you don't want. I can uninstall Samsung Messages, which I have done, and which is something that I was extremely surprised I was able to do. And if I wanted to, I could uninstall Google Messages instead and use Samsung Messages. Another thing which I'm surprised I could uninstall, and in fact which didn't even come pre-installed, was Samsung Mail. As you can see here, I don't have it installed on the phone. And it's something which I used on my old phone, but I don't really need to now, because it was just a duplicate. I already have my email accounts in Gmail and Outlook, and that's fine. So I'm very glad that Samsung is allowing you to uninstall apps which previously were system apps. The same thing goes for Facebook, which annoyingly was pre-installed, but at least it wasn't a system app like it was on the S20 Plus, and I could actually uninstall the app rather than just uninstalling updates, which I had to do on the S20 Plus. Link to Windows is another feature which I'm glad Samsung has. It's part of their partnership with Microsoft. It makes the whole experience feel a lot more iPhone-like and allows you to use your phone and any Windows device together really well. It's something else which I talk about in my top 10 video, which will be at the corner of this video if you want to go and have a look. And it's definitely a positive, even though it does come pre-installed. The last thing, which I think is underrated, and I will definitely be making a video or at least a short about, is remastering. Here, if you look at this photo, it's really dark, you can't really see much detail. But once I remaster it, you can see it makes it look much, much better. This is also something which works on GIFs now, and this is even more impressive. It takes its time, but if you have a look at this GIF of Star from Star vs. the Forces of Evil, it looks much more high resolution, the colours look better. I was frankly shocked when I first did it, and it works like this with almost every GIF that I throw at it. Now, the only two mixed things are the fact that the Microsoft apps are pre-installed. I think they are useful for a number of people. However, I don't think having Outlook, OneDrive pre-installed on the device is really useful for most people. I think they should just be left off there and available to download if people really want them. The other thing is multi-control. This is another feature which I talked about in my top 10 video, but unfortunately I couldn't show it off. I couldn't really do much about it past just talking because it's locked to only Galaxy Book devices. And that's the main reason, that's the only reason why it's in this mixed category. It looks like a really useful feature, however, because I don't have a Galaxy Book, I can't use it, and so it can't really go into a Pro because not many people have Galaxy Books. Now, onto the miscellaneous category. It's mostly positives. The phone, even though it's really large, it does feel nice to hold. I like the curves on the back. It is a bit slippery, so I would recommend a case or a skin like I have, and which I have a video of an application of, if you'd like to watch that. Again, that will be in the top right. But the main downside is the curved screen. I do like curved screens in some aspects. They make a phone look and feel a lot more premium. But I am also glad that they did reduce the curve. It means you can use the pen effectively on more surface area. However, having a curve at all still poses drawbacks, mainly in the glass being more prone to breaking and it being a lot more difficult to get tempered glass screen protectors, especially given the under-display fingerprint scanners in this phone. There are only a few good options for tempered glass screen protectors for the S23 Ultra, with the one I got being the Whetstone Dome, and that has a relatively complex application requiring you to put UV adhesive on and to make sure it spreads out evenly, etc. And that's something that's not a problem with the S23 and the S23 Plus, which have flat screens. I'm not really sure whether I'd prefer having the curved or the flat display because of those pros and cons, but I think a lot of people do seem to prefer the flat display, and so that's, something which is worth bringing up. So that's everything I had to say about the S23 Ultra. I think overall it's a wonderful phone. I think it's the best phone available now in almost every aspect. However, given the huge price tag, I think for most people, something like a Pixel 7 Pro or a Pixel 7 is probably better for them if they want to go for an Android phone. But if you're willing to spend the over £1,000 this phone costs without, any trade-ins, I think you should go for it. It's an amazing phone. I think it's Samsung's formula perfected, and it makes me look forward to what they do next year. Anyway, make sure to like and subscribe. I'll be producing more videos in the coming weeks, one about phone cases for this, another about the Bing AI, which I've gained access to. So as I said, please subscribe so you can see those videos when they come out. That's all I have to say today. Goodbye and thanks for watching.